Hello and welcome to The Top Story, a podcast with the headlines of the day from our correspondents around the world. I'm Xi Zhi. Coming up in this edition, Chinese President Xi Jinping has wrapped up his three-nation tour of Southeast Asia after concluding his visit to Cambodia. US President Donald Trump says there will be a trade deal with Europe following a meeting with the Italian Prime Minister. And the European Central Bank has cut interest rates for the seventh time since June last year. We begin in Asia. Chinese President Xi Jinping has wrapped up his three-nation tour of Southeast Asia after concluding his visit to Cambodia on Friday. President Xi has called on China and Cambodia to carry forward the ironclad friendship forged by the elder generation of Chinese leaders and King Norodom Sihanouk. He met King Norodom Sihamoni during a state visit and said the two sides should endow their community with a shared future with new connotations of the time. President Xi also met Queen Mother Norodom Sihanouk and hailed her as a promoter of the China-Cambodia friendship. He welcomed the Queen Mother to visit China anytime. While holding talks with Cambodian Senate President Hun Sen, President Xi urged both sides to make good use of a new strategic dialogue between the foreign ministers and defense ministers. The two countries agreed to build a China-Cambodia community with a shared future in a new era, following talks between President Xi and Prime Minister Hun Manet. The two leaders also designated 2025 as the China-Cambodia Year of Tourism. Now, Tambo has more on the Chinese leader's state visit to Cambodia.
This is President Xi Jinping's second visit to Cambodia in 9 years, and he arrived in Phnom Penh on Thursday at noontime, and he was welcomed by the Cambodian King Norodom Sihamoni at the airport. And later in the day, President Xi Jinping met with the Cambodian King, Senate President Hun Sen, and Prime Minister Hun Manet on Thursday. And during the meetings with the Cambodian top leaders, Xi said that China and Cambodia set a model of equality, mutual trust, and win-win cooperation between countries of different sizes. And building a China-Cambodian community with a shared future is a choice of history and the people from two countries. And President Xi Jinping expects that both sides would strengthen the China-Cambodia Diamond Hexagon Cooperation Framework, enhancing political trust, promoting high-quality cooperation, and increasing security. And that's going to lead to more exchanges between the people of China and Cambodia, benefiting both countries and contributing to peace and stability in the region and beyond. And also, President Xi Jinping and the Cambodian Prime Minister witnessed the exchanges of more than 30 bilateral documents covering areas including production and supply chain, artificial intelligence, development assistance, customs inspection and quarantine, as well as health and news.
That was Tanbo reporting from Phnom Penh. In China, organizers of the China International Consumer Products Expo say participants of 3 matchmaking events have reached 52 signing intents worth 92 billion yuan, or more than $12 billion. Exhibitors brought their latest products and ideas to southern China. Du Yusi brings us some highlights from the event in Hainan at the conclusion of the expo.
This year's expo actually features several major themes: digital consumption, domestic and international consumer products, and the fashion trend. The tech pavilion is definitely attracting the largest crowd, showcasing the science fiction conception coming to reality, from exoskeletons to advanced AI robotics. On the consumer side, many domestic exporters are introducing their international standard products to enthusiast local buyers. Meanwhile, exhibitors from over 71 countries is introducing international products ranging from garment food, domestic cosmetic, and makeup, offering Chinese consumers a wide range of global selection. And adding to the excitement, ultimately, the fashion lovers can now enjoy the fashion runway show right here at the expo, so with multiple brands offering their unique selections here.
That was Du Yusi in Hainan province. Turning to North America, US President Donald Trump says there will be a trade deal with Europe. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni is equally confident as the two leaders met at the White House. She invited Trump to visit Rome and said the US president will consider meeting representatives from the European Union. Nathan King reports.
A very warm visit by the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. Remember, she was the only European leader to actually attend Donald Trump's inauguration. Europe and the US not in a great position at the moment, especially when it comes to security and tariffs. And Meloni has positioned herself to be a sort of bridge between Brussels and Washington. But where they seem most positive is on the potential for a trade deal. Remember, the 20% tariff was paused on the European Union. There's so far a 10% tariff, plus the autos and a few other things. But both of them suggested that a deal will be done before the 90-day pause is up.
Oh, there'll be a trade deal, 100%. Oh, well, you think there won't be? Of course there'll be a trade deal, very much. They want to make one very, very much, and we're going to make a trade deal. I fully expect it, but it'll be a fair deal.
I'm sure we can make a deal, and I'm here to help on that. I cannot, deal in the name of the European Union. My goal would be invite President Trump to pay an official visit to Italy and understand if there's a possibility when he comes to organize also such a meeting with Europe.
The question is now whether Meloni can go back to Europe and bring others together. She's offered an invitation to Donald Trump to pay a visit. There's going to be a lot of flashpoints, not just on tariffs and trade, but also on Russia. Meloni was adamant to say that Russia had been the aggressor in the Ukraine conflict. Here at the White House, that's a differing view. Even though there's a cultural, political affinity between these two leaders, don't necessarily think it's all plain sailing.
That was Nathan King in Washington, D.C. Staying in the Americas, power company Luma Energy says nearly half of the homes and businesses it serves in Puerto Rico were without power on Thursday. A widespread blackout struck the island a day earlier and left hospitals and airports in the dark. Puerto Rico's electrical system has remained fragile since two powerful hurricanes in 2017. Nisa Soledad Paris has more.
Once again, Puerto Rico plunged into darkness. The island's electrical grid collapsed Wednesday, triggering an island-wide blackout just as Easter weekend tourism was ramping up. Trains ground to a halt. Residents rushed to secure fuel for generators. For locals, this is a sadly familiar crisis.
The bad thing is that all of Puerto Rico is suffering from this, and it keeps happening frequently.
Businesses bear a heavy financial burden as a result of these constant disruptions.
What's happening is a general blackout, which is outrageous because we pay for electricity service.
Puerto Rico's energy crisis worsened dramatically after Hurricane Maria devastated the island in 2017, leaving many without power for nearly a year.
And this brings back maybe some PTSD, some post-traumatic stress disorder from the hurricanes, the smell of diesel, not being able to perform your daily routine. And what's worse is not having an ounce of hope on when is the power going to come back, nor if you're going to be able to, be in a sustainable environment for the next couple of days.
Despite privatizing the energy sector, Puerto Rico's power problems persist. University professor and economist Antonio Fernos, who is also a resident, sees broader implications.
In these times of economic uncertainty, where, with everything with this administration, with tariffs and the stock market, for this to happen diminishes the government's credibility for our industrial policy. If Puerto Rico wants to come back as we were, in the 70s, a power player for industrial and manufacturing, this cannot happen ever again.
Luma Energy, responsible for the island's power transmission and distribution, estimates full-service restoration will take 48 to 72 hours. The governor expressed outrage on Thursday.
This is a shame for the people of Puerto Rico that we have a problem of this magnitude in transmission and that the entire island is without electricity. This cannot be, nor is it the Puerto Rico we want. I will not allow this to continue.
But the outages keep happening, including another widespread blackout just 4 months ago on New Year's Eve. The ongoing crisis is exacerbating Puerto Rico's population exodus, with more Puerto Ricans now living on the mainland than on the island itself.
That was Lisa Soledad Perez on the recurrent energy shortage in Puerto Rico. Now turning to Europe. The European Central Bank has cut interest rates for the 7th time since June last year. It cut its key interest rate by 25 basis points, reducing the benchmark rate on the deposit facility to over 2.2%. The bank also warned of exceptional uncertainty caused by the Trump administration's tariff hikes. Peter Oliver has more from Berlin.
Exceptional circumstances created by Donald Trump's tariff war. It has resulted in making sure that what we pretty much knew was going to happen has happened. And Christine Lagarde went ahead and cut the interest rate, the base rate of interest across the Eurozone to 2.25%, taking it down 25 base points. The reasons for this, well, first off, what that means. It means that it's going to be easier for people in the Eurozone to take loans from Eurozone banks. The hope is that that improves spending and that it improves investments as well. The other reasons that Christine Lagarde laid out for the reasons it's being done now, even though, as I said, we knew it was coming, 7 cuts to interest rates have happened in the last 12 months, but this is really to try and protect the levels of growth that are very minuscule in some very important economies around the Eurozone, particularly here in Germany, where we're really in a situation where we're staring down the barrel of a third year, potentially, of recession in the Eurozone's biggest economy. It's also been done because, in part, Christine Lagarde said they've done the job they set out to do on getting inflation down to where they wanted it. Inflation is within Eurozone targets at the moment, ECB targets, I beg your pardon, across the Eurozone, and it looks like it may stay that way, so they've cut the inflation for that. The other reason that they've done this, as we mentioned, those unprecedented times of uncertainty, the idea of following through with this, of the European Central Bank following through with something that would have been in the long-term planning for investors and those managing funds across the Eurozone, that they've done this to ensure that there is a signal being sent of a level of stability existing here in Europe, even if we're going through some of the most unstable times around the globe financially.
That was Peter Oliver reporting from Berlin. Finally, in Africa, President Felix Tshisekedi of the Democratic Republic of the Congo has met his Congolese counterpart, Faure Gnassingbe, the African Union's new mediator for the crisis in the DRC. Gnassingbe says he's keen to get the peace process moving as fighting between Congolese forces and the M23 rebels continues. Chris Ochomringa has more from Kinshasa.
Togolese President Faure Gnassingbe has arrived in Kinshasa for his first meeting with his Congolese counterpart Felix Tshisekedi since his appointment as the African Union's new mediator of the armed conflict in eastern DRC. The leaders discussed the conflict between the M23 rebels and Congolese forces and the resumption of the Nairobi and Luanda peace processes. Gnassingbe has replaced the Angolan leader João Lourenço, who stepped down last month to focus on leading the African Union. Previous efforts to end the fighting in eastern DRC have not been successful. A recent initiative brokered by the Emir of Qatar led to calls for a ceasefire, which has been violated. The DRC accuses Rwanda of backing the M23 rebels to plunder its minerals, but Rwanda has denied the accusation and blamed Congolese officials for supporting a Rwandan militia that has been attacking the Tutsi ethnic group in eastern DRC. The armed conflict has left thousands of people dead and forced more than 4 million others to flee their homes since fighting broke out in late 2021.
That was Chris Ochomringa reporting. Now recapping the headlines before we go. Chinese President Xi Jinping has wrapped up his 3-nation tour of Southeast Asia after concluding his visit to Cambodia. US President Donald Trump says there will be a trade deal with Europe following a meeting with the Italian Prime Minister. And the European Central Bank has cut interest rates for the 7th time since June last year. That's it for this edition of The Top Story, a podcast that brings you world headlines every weekday. For more news in politics, business, sports and culture, you can subscribe to the Beijing Hour, a 1-hour podcast news magazine program. We would welcome and appreciate all ratings and reviews. I'm Qi Zhi. Thank you for listening.